Now we have a very special guest coming to us all the way from Israel. Dr. Talia Golan is one of the world's foremost experts in groundbreaking treatments for pancreatic cancer patients. She's developed a special maintenance regimen to keep patients who have BRCA mutated pancreatic cancer in remission after chemotherapy. Dr. Golan, thank you for joining us. Why did you get involved in pancreatic cancer research, one of the deadliest cancers?
My parents are both physicians, so I was really brought up in a house that healing, caring for others just seemed very natural, and it was something that I always wanted to participate in from quite a young age. I also grew up in a house where there was a thirst for knowledge and gaining knowledge and being curious and asking questions. So I very happily went into medicine, I must say. And in medicine, I very naturally chose oncology. I felt that I could have meaningful patient care, meaningful relationships with with the families and the patients, and also the opportunity to do some research that I was always interested in. Specifically why I chose pancreatic cancer, I can't really put my finger on that. I think that there was just something very devastating about the disease that didn't put me off. I think it pulled me towards the disease. So I didn't feel turned away from the patients and the family. I wanted to be there for them in that way. And I think that the fact that the disease is so tough and so difficult to treat, and the biology of that really intrigued me. So it was kind of like a magnet. It just pulled me towards it, and I went willingly, I think.
How does the treatment you developed work, and who does it help?
Yeah, so I co-led the effort of olaparib, which is a PARP inhibitor. It's a biological agent. We used it in patients that were identified to have a germline BRCA mutation, which is a hereditary gene that causes different kinds of cancer, for example, breast, ovarian, prostate, and pancreatic cancer. In these patients, we treated them with chemotherapy. It had to have platinum because patients with BRCA mutations have a real exquisite sensitivity to that kind of drug. The problem is that the chemotherapy over a course of time becomes very debilitating to the patients. The neuropathy with the tingling in the hands and the feet can really impact our physical activity and the way we feel and our discomfort. And then the progressive hematological toxicity with the chemotherapy is also one of the things that really just limits how long we can use it and in what doses. So we actually brought the PARP inhibitors into these patients, thinking that maybe there's a way to maintain the effect that we got with the chemotherapy. It was quite novel at the time when we designed the study drug, the study design, because people were kind of thinking, will maintenance ever work in a disease like pancreatic cancer with such a limited overall survival? But we felt that if we identified the right patient and we treated them in this specific strategy of chemo for several months and then maintaining that with this olaparib PARP inhibitor drug, we would be able to impact their disease. The drug got approval from the FDA at the end of 2019 and recently in EMEA. So it's been a very, very, very exciting journey. And I'm very grateful to all the participators and the families and mostly the patients that were prepared to be in a trial like this, because it was randomized also for placebo. So that's always difficult for all of us.
And Dr. Golan, what sort of results have you seen from the approach that you have taken to the treatment?
So what we saw with the drug is that we extended progression-free survival in these patients. And interestingly, in the patients that actually have a response, it's a smaller fraction of the patients, but those responses went on for more than 2 years. So when the drug works and it helps, the effect and the durability of that is really evident on the patients. I have a small percentage of patients that have gone into long-term remission, so their disease has kind of disappeared for more than 3-4 years now. That was something that I couldn't really envision seeing. It seemed a bit impossible, and it's possible in some patients. And I think that is really like the fact that it can happen is really a ray of light for us, that if it can happen in several patients and in this disease, then, we just have to find other patients with other genomic alterations and new drugs and, just carry on this, but it's possible.
Thank you for explaining that. And over the years, what sort of improvements have you seen in the treatment of pancreatic cancer?
So I think for the majority of our patients, the mainstream of treatment is still chemotherapy based. But over the last several years, we've seen identification of what we would call low frequency specific alterations in the tumors or germline mutations. And these mutations are what we would say is actionable. So there's a biological treatment that can actually treat these low frequency mutations. And if you think about it, we're kind of starting to really break up pancreatic cancer into smaller, some of them are really small subtypes, but they're identifiable. And some of the responses that we're seeing are really meaningful. So once again, for the majority of our patients, we still have the chemo standard of care approach. But in a smaller minority, we're definitely becoming much more precise about identifying those tumors, the biology of those specific tumors, and how we treat them.
That makes sense. What would you tell people about the advancements in pancreatic cancer and what they mean for patients and their loved ones?
It means that there's a ray of hope. It means that you may not be in that small fraction of identifiable, actionable mutations, but it means that it's there. And if we've managed to decipher some of them over the last several years, it means that we're on the right path. And I really believe that for the future, we have still a lot of work to do, because for the vast majority of our patients, we haven't been impactful enough on how we change the course of their disease. But there's deeper understanding about their tumors, and I think that in the future that is going to translate into how we treat those patients.
Dr. Golan, in your experience, why are foundations like the Sina Magowitz Foundation so important?
So I think this has been a real learning experience for me. It wasn't evident to me at the beginning of my career how this isn't really, it's not only my problem as a treating physician. This is a scientific problem. This is a medical problem. This is my problem as a treating physician. This is also the researcher's problem. This is the patient's problem, and it's their family's problem. And only once we all get around the table and start working on this together will there really be an opportunity to make a difference for this devastating disease. And it took me a while to understand that this is, we really all are, we're all on the same side, and we all really focused around the same problem. And I'm grateful for people like Roger Magowitz that has taken his loss, which I can't even imagine, and turned it into something powerful, something about doing, giving, making, believing that it can make a difference. And I've seen over the years how these kind of foundations definitely make a difference.
Dr. Golan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you for the incredible work that you're doing for pancreatic cancer patients.
Thanks, Miranda, and all of you keep well and safe. Bye from Israel.